Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 16th Annual Beloit International Film Festival. You're joining us for the special program, The Yin and Yang of Screenwriting and Directing. This program will be about an hour long. We're going to talk with three different filmmakers at this year's film festival, all of whom both wrote and directed their feature films. My name is Parker Winship. I'm also a BIFF filmmaker this year. I wrote and directed the short film A Lark and a Swallow, which is playing in the Wisconsin-Illinois showdown section. Let's see here. I hope you're all going to enjoy it. I think this is a really cool opportunity to talk to filmmakers, get insight into their process, both in screenwriting and directing. I just want to take this opportunity to say, we're in day 2 of the festival and the festival's donation campaign as well. So every day we're hoping to get $1,000 closer to the goal. And if you're able, please consider donating to the festival. Any amount of support you can give BIFF goes to building a better future for this festival. All right, let's get started. So I'm going to start by just introducing the filmmakers one at a time. First, we'll bring in David Gutnik. He is the co-writer and director of the feature film MATERNA. Hi, David. How you doing?
Hi. How's it going?
Good.
Thank you for having me, and congratulations on your short film.
Thank you very much, and congratulations on your film.
Now I got to go see it.
Yes. Yeah, if you like. Why don't you start by just really briefly, if you don't mind, just describing the feature film for the audience if they haven't seen it.
Okay. It's film follows four characters who are 4 women who are all on the same subway car in New York City. And this is pre-pandemic, when everybody was still on top of each other and not wearing masks. So the 4 of them are on this train together. They're strangers, and there's an incident on the train, a threat of potential violence. And so every time we come back to the train, we see it from a different woman's perspective, and then we follow her story, sort of the events in their lives leading up to them being on this train together. And we sort of meet them all at kind of inflection points in their lives, sort of moments of crisis. Yeah, so that's the basic gist.
Yeah. And yeah, it's a really, really exciting, unusual movie. I would really recommend it to everybody out there who could see it if they can. All right. Next, we're going to bring on, let's see, Aleksandra Szczepanowska. Aleksandra, am I pronouncing that correctly?
Szczepanowska, yes, almost.
Okay. All right. And Aleksandra wrote and directed the feature film Touch, which I also highly recommend. And if we have a trailer, I think we're going to just briefly watch the trailer for Touch.
Okay.
Transforma nada en algo. Échale un ojo a suerte, puede conseguir lo que deseas. Suerte negra está disfrazada con un beso de Forgive me, my love.
Okay, very, very intense.
Cool.
And Aleksandra, if you wouldn't mind, could you also just briefly describe the movie just for the audience in case they haven't seen it yet?
Yes, it's a romantic thriller, and it follows Fei Fei, who's a Caucasian woman living in China, totally assimilated in Chinese life, speaking Chinese, and has a Chinese husband and child with him. And through her feeling of isolation, other than being fully integrated, she nevertheless has a feeling of isolation, which is very easy to happen in a place like China. Even after speaking the language and feeling fully integrated, she falls kind of in lust, I would say, with a blind masseur, and they engage in an affair. And she breaks it off eventually when things start crumbling around her, and then he goes after her. And so it becomes sort of it's a mixed genre, and 2/3 of the way through, it's sort of already into a hard thriller mode.
Yes, and it is quite thrilling. I will add. So we're going to introduce one more filmmaker. Last but not least, we have Stephen Mills, who is the writer and director of Love Is Not Love. Hi, Stephen.
Yeah, hello.
All right, and I think we're going to show the trailer for Love Is Not Love.
Okay.
Early December, New York City. And everyone is talking about something. Their lives, but no, something more. Love. They are on the hunt for love. Why? Because they haven't found it. And because they haven't found it, they imagine it. They make it into a myth and chase the myth instead. And that is not love. Meet Frank. Frank's not young. Meet Raina. Raina is young. They become lovers, but Frank winds up back at the fragile altar of his 30-year marriage to Paula. Who'd he pick? He didn't. Now what? Two Irish construction workers dig for the answer in the myth of Tristan and Isolde. Isolde. Do we make our own choices, or does fate do it for us? And in the meantime, all we have is the chase.
All I'm doing is just chasing bubbles.
Lie down now, brother. That's all there is. Chase on. Run yourself ragged.
That's where I'm stuck. I'm stuck in the chase, but I'm not getting closer to anything.
We're all chasing bubbles, but the narrator Joel begs to differ. From Triskelion Entertainment and the award-winning creator of the groundbreaking Liminal, the psychological Edward Hopper-inspired hotel lobby, and the worldwide festival pleaser A Cigar at the Beach, comes a new feature, Love Is Not Love. Starring Alejandra Goyas, Louise Martin, Tanya Cornelisi, Russell Simpson, Cameron Taggy, and Stephen Keep Mills in this eternal conflict between the erotic and the domestic, between myth and morality, between you and the one you're still looking for.
Are you in line or out of line?
Chase on.
Okay, and looking forward to chasing
Awesome.
with all three of you today. Stephen, to keep the pattern consistent, could you please just briefly describe the movie for viewers in case they haven't seen it yet?
Well, first of all, I think the other two films look fantastic, and I can't wait to see them. The basis of the story is the rift between the erotic and the domestic. one seems to require the forfeit of the other. And I wanted to see if I could find a bridge between the broken connection. So that was the spirit of the tale. And I think also that love is not possible when your fantasy life becomes richer than your reality life. So I think it's, we always come up against the wall of fantasy, which always looks better, seems to have more solutions than the reality which fate has put us in front of and which we don't really acknowledge. So I'll leave you on that, that unended sentence.
That's perfect. I think that it perfectly suits your film. Okay, so I think we're gonna jump right in here. I'm gonna start by, so I'm gonna address at least initially all of our questions to just one of you, but feel free, you know, for anybody else to kind of jump in where it feels appropriate, and as long as you're not kind of like yelling over anybody else. And I'll also say for the viewers at home or wherever you are, feel free to jump in with any questions that you have for the filmmakers. I can't promise that we'll get to all of them, but certainly I don't feel like I have the best questions on the planet. So I'm sure other people can contribute some really cool ideas, and we'll get to as many as are possible. So I'm going to start with a question for Aleksandra. And Aleksandra, we talked about this a little bit already, actually, when I spoke with you last week. Mm-hmm. But I just want to talk about, since we're delving into both writing and directing and the kind of continuum of a project over the course of years, really, and going from the script stage, all the way to the final edit. Just in what are some of the biggest ways in which the finished film is different from what you initially had in mind in the screenplay?
And for this particular film, or do you think generically? How,
oh yeah, for Touch.
I wrote the first draft extremely quickly, full of inspiration, and I usually get stuck in the middle with films, or I don't know how they end. But this one was very unusual. The script was very unusual in that I think it's been germinating for so many years, for 20 years, the story really. And there were so many things that came together organically, and it sprung like that. So, although it took a month to write the first draft, I could say it took 20 years as well, right? So it took 1 month. But then because of I think this is in life in general, we don't know how certain things are perceived when we say them, or what the things we do. We have our own ideas and motivations. The same happens when you write a screenplay. You have ideas about why a character does or says things, but sometimes it's not interpreted that way. And everybody who reads the screenplay then sees the character as motivated by X, when you really don't want that. You want her to be motivated by Y. Mm-hmm. So there were those sorts of things. I mean, when I first wrote it, everyone was comparing, everyone thought sort of the main character was a sex addict, for example. This is not what I wanted the film to be about, right? So, I mean, this is interesting in itself. But so I had to take I had to finesse a few scenes. But then really the bigger changes started happening when I went to China. And I initially wanted the film to be appreciated and understood by both cultures, by Chinese and American, or Western, let's say. Mm-hmm. And there were so many differences in how even just the elements of thrillers are perceived.
Sure.
So, for example, I had it as a thriller. I thought it was scary, but I'd have Chinese people tell me, well, no, it's not. We don't understand why she's scared, because this is how men behave. They, it's a general, of course, thing. In China, a man will do this and it's okay.
Yeah, we talked about this a little bit. Where the boundaries are very different.
Boundaries, personal space, what's appropriate, what's, and here it would be really scary because you're violating my, personal space, or what I consider safe, or the custom culturally, and over there they have a different custom culturally. So it wasn't scary. So I really ramped it up to the point that the film almost got to the horror element at the end. And so that's this cross, it was always a cross genre, but this cross genre became so much more apparent as I was ramping up the thriller element. Yeah. In the end, because of the way it was shot and other things, it doesn't, I don't think, from what I've heard, appeal to most Chinese, actually, even though I tried in the writing phase. The way I shot it in the end was very, so for example, another thing in China, they have stories which are not following one character, more because everything is community based, and that goes into their ancient philosophical traditions and storytelling traditions, which are ancient. They just don't follow one character; they follow a community or a family, or Mm-hmm. And our Western tradition is to follow one heroine or hero, and so I had us follow Fei Fei, and so that was I also ramped up the other characters a lot more than I had initially. The husband character was he was just sort of an effigy. And then by the time I was speaking to more people in China, it almost became an ensemble among the three characters. Whereas before it was just, it was just Fei Fei.
Interesting, because it's not, having seen the movie, it is, that's, it all seems very planned out. Like it seems like, and what you're talking about are such dramatic changes where, in fact, like the actual genre changed and the kind of almost the structure of it changed in terms of taking it from one character to a kind of ensemble piece.
But then what I have to say is also interesting is that it changed again in the cutting.
Yeah.
And it actually ended up going back to the original. Mm-hmm. Because because it was organic to me and because it was organic to the story, and I was forcing it to be something it's not.
Sure.
So we cut out all these other storylines that were kind of suggested, demanded, whatever, by the people I was consulting with in China. And then it ended up in the cutting room and ended up going back to the original, more towards the original idea.
Yeah. David, your film also is sort of a cross-cultural story. I mean, you shot in at least 2 countries. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I wonder, did you have any kind of similar process in terms of, through the writing and directing, working in a culture that I'm assuming is not, totally native to your own, in terms of fine-tuning the story to make it interpretable to people in multiple cultures?
That's an interesting question. I didn't in the sort of cross-cultural sense. I mean, I shot in New York and I shot in Kyrgyzstan. Now, I co-wrote the film with 2 of my lead actresses, and one of them is from Kyrgyzstan, and we brought our sort of personal stories to the film and dramatized our real stories. And so my Kyrgyz co-writer is Russian speaking, and so my family's from Ukraine. My father was actually born in Kazakhstan. So I worked when we shot in Kyrgyzstan. We worked in Russian. It was it was really cool because I've never had that. I've never gotten. Well, it was the first time I worked in a foreign country, but it was really cool to be able to work with crew and all local cast and crew in Russian. It was a challenge for me, but I got through it. I mean, Russian is my family's from there. I grew up speaking both, but my Russian is not as I don't think in Russian.
Sure.
Maybe I feel in Russian, but I don't think in Russian. But it was
interesting.
It was that. But as far as the edit is always the final draft of your script is always happens in the edit. I have a background as an editor, and the language of a screenplay is the first thing you have to kind of abandon when you go into an edit. The language of text and the language of picture and sound are two different logics. So on a basic sort of general level, the film was rediscovered in the edit. But on a sort of more granular level, we, speaking of heroines and heroine stories, and one sort of the traditional narrative arc, we had four protagonists in the film. And I would say the thing that we worked on the most in the edit, that was most, that we had to, you always have to find everything. But the thing that we really had to discover was the order of the vignettes. In the script, it was very sort of intellectually constructed. Who we start with, who we move on to, who we end with, on a very sort of logical, literal level. And in the edit, we had to kind of reimagine it. It's a bit like kind of putting together a playlist, and finding the sort of emotional, the emotional superstructure of the film. But the thing that was cool that was maybe the most important discovery was that I didn't really think about in the edit, was trying to find a single arc for the characters.
Yeah.
Trying to find a single heroine's journey, even though they're four characters' stories, editing it and structuring it as if it's one character's story. That was, once we stumbled upon that idea, that became a governing principle that dictated for us where we need to start and where we need to end, and what the handoffs are like.
Was there sort of like either like a kind of eureka moment or like a kind of Rosetta Stone for the movie where you figured out like, oh, okay, like these are the pieces we need to shift around in order for this to work as a full arc from beginning to end?
It's funny, for all of you are filmmakers here, so you'll sympathize with this. There's a eureka moment every day, and then you're like, and then you wake up, and then the next day you're like, holy crap, like that was complete bullshit. This sucks. And so it's it's the highs and lows, the peaks and valleys, the emotional roller coaster of an edit. So we had many eureka moments. For this one, for this particular, I can't remember the day or the incident, but it certainly was the BCAD, the before and the after of the editorial life of the film.
Right. And Stephen, we had talked about a couple. Your movie, I believe, also changed in some pretty fundamental ways. From writing through the editing process. And I wonder if you could talk about any of that process or kind of insights you have into it.
Well, the eureka moments that I had were, I'm going to have to change something here. I mean, they weren't things that fell into place. They were things that showed the rift between action and story. For instance, I was going to have Frank, the character I play, and Paula get together at the end after Frank reveals his nightmare. But looking at the footage, it was like, this is too dark. This is a sad tale. I can't put these two together again. Nobody would believe it or buy it, or I wouldn't. So you're 3/4 of the way through filming and you don't know what the end is going to be, or you're going to have to change it. But I think the change is great. I mean, because your intuition has to be brave enough to jump in on it. Because sometimes they think, well, I didn't think of this. I didn't, structure it this way, or I didn't count on it turning out this way, and you have to just give that up and say, you have to follow the film. You put your film in motion, and then you got to catch up with it almost. So I find that that's good. That the 3 words, I don't know, are very creative. They can scare you, but they're the path to discovery. And the way we shot it, I mean, if I'm going to direct it, I wrote it and act in it. I mean, you got to really separate that out, or you'll go crazy.
Right.
So we took a lot of time, a lot of rehearsal, so that when the camera was on, there was no director on the set. We knew what we were going to do, and we'd look at feedback, playback. But then it really is kind of dangerous, Where's the director? We don't know. We don't care. We're playing the scene, and however that occurs, that's what we have. So I don't know. To me, I guess the yin and the yang is you start on one foot and you end up on the other.
Mm-hmm. I feel so left out. You both starred in your films, yeah? I guess
Yes.
What are you waiting for?
Next time I'm going to have to try.
Yeah. I'm really curious, talking about just, this process of finding it in the edit. Did any of the 3 of you do any reshoots, or if not reshoots, like pickups or additional shooting because you realized you were missing a piece in the edit?
Oh,
Yeah.
the edit.
I did. But
No, I did. I had one just because I had an editor on set. I reshot something while we were still in production.
Oh, that's huge. And Stephen, what did you?
I said it.
Was it an additional scene or?
No, I find that if you take a scene and do it like 3 days apart, it makes an interesting way to edit the scene, because you've got 2 different emotional strains that can affect each other. So I set aside one day to reshoot maybe 2 or 3 scenes that I felt were important, possibly because I felt I didn't play them well enough. I wanted to give myself a second chance. But it does give you another arrow in the quiver in the editing room to be able to have 2 choices, 2 scenes to make into one.
Yeah. David, did you do any reshoots on yours or pickups? So, which kind of leads me to another question about MATERNA, which is, were there essentially like separate shoots for the different stories in the movie, or were they broken up into, obviously there's a kind of a separate shoot when you're going to Kyrgyzstan, but like, and a separate crew, but were the others shot as kind of isolated short films and then edited together?
I mean, I wouldn't say they were shot as shorts. I would say they were shot separately over the course of 4 months.
Right.
We shot each section per month. And then the sequence that sort of unites the plot and all the characters on the train, we shot at the very end, together with our fourth shoot, essentially.
Right. So you're essentially, I'm assuming then you get a chance to at least do preliminary edits of the different pieces as you're working. Is that right? So did that inform what you're gonna either the script or the sort of shooting plan for if you shoot 2 of the pieces and then you edit it together and start to see either something you really like or something you want to avoid, does that then affect the next 2 shoots?
Good question. Really good question. Yes and no. But I think the way that it affected is maybe more on a subliminal level.
Mhm.
You know, there were designed echoes throughout each, pre-designed, preconceived, you know, visual, and but I think I found myself in the edit being like, oh wow, like look at that shot, that pan, that focus pull. Look at that, you know, idea. Like I didn't know that I was mimicking or echoing that idea, but you know, I did. So the process of shooting sort of kind of created a visual grammar that carried out throughout the rest of the other shoots. Sometimes, you know, in a preconceived way, and sometimes just because of the order of how we shot. And then, you know, I would say probably the thing that was most influenced in a cumulative way was the ending.
Yeah. Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense in terms of you know, you want to make sure that you have the characters in the right place, like, you know, that you kind of fully understand them, and you're in some ways not really going to know that until you've already shot their whole story and kind of have an idea of a better idea of who they are. So, David, not to keep you on the spotlight, but it looks like we have a question here for you. It says, can you give us more insight into how you work the 4 characters' arcs into one story arc?
Well, thank you for the question. It's a good one. I think I should sort of start a little sooner. So a little pull back a little bit. So, you know, when we started writing together, Jade and Asol and I, well, let me start with myself. I was at a vulnerable place in my life. I was in a lot of pain, and I needed to make this film. I didn't know exactly what it was going to be. I just knew I needed to confront how I felt directly, and be more open and honest and direct and vulnerable than I've ever been, so that I could heal and get better. A kind of confession. And I had 2 other people in my life, Jade and Asol, who were going through some of their own challenging circumstances, and we sort of gravitated towards each other, like, I don't know, a bit like drips of water that are right next to each other that become so, like, in a way, you know, I felt listening to them talk about their pain was in its own way healing for me, because it made me feel less alone. And so, and I think that applied to all of us. So, you know, the story that we were telling was essentially one story from the start. You know, like there were the shady region on the Venn diagram of our struggle was central and prominent, you know, and a guiding light for everything from the writing process to the directing and the editing. So even though these worlds are very different, and so I don't mean to elide over or flatten the dimensionality of those differences and the importance of seeding those differences, because they are real differences. But you know, there's also overlap and shared connection, and a root at the root of it that brings them together. So by the time we got into the edit, in a way, it was about trying to reconstitute that thing that brought us together in the first place, but then just sort of on a more, you know, like the stories have different, the vignettes have different flavors and they have different feels, because each vignette was treated according to its own emotional DNA of the main character. You know, we were slavishly adherent to the perspective and point of view of the main character in each one. So the style of each one had was an extension of the interior life of the characters. So, you know, like, but we had to. So how do you cohere and unify these? So, you know, the story starts in a kind of more poetic, if you will, a bit more. There's a lot of mystery in it, and there's not many words, and you kind of have to learn to. You have to lean into it. So the you know, because the movie has to kind of teach you to be able to be okay with going on that ride where you really have to lean in and participate and collaborate with the storytelling and the narrative, and accept that this isn't going to be your typical paint by numbers kind of story. So finding that first one was really important to kind of, because a movie, I mean, every intro, every opening, every beginning of a movie is there to teach you what it is. The DNA of every movie is there. And so it was just important to start that. And then so once that, knowing how to begin in that really kind of open way, it really gave us, and then there's just, so, okay, sorry, not to just, you know, I don't know if the person who asked has seen the film, but, you know, I don't think I'm giving too much away by saying the movie moves from a place of disconnection and isolation and dissonance and loneliness, a very modern kind of loneliness in the beginning. And over the course of it, the overall narrative arc is about kind of trying to, you know, fix family fractures, get better, heal, connect, find your way out of your own out of you know, the damage and the shell shock of your own life, you know, like in a very sort of basic lived in experience way, not any kind of huge big crises, but, you know, so over the course of the movie, like, we start with one character. She has nobody. And, you know, the movie sort of populates over the course of it. In each vignette, things just get a little bit better, you know, and by the end, there is a kind of resolution. And by resolution, I don't mean like a happy ending or anything like that. I mean that the reason for the narrative has found its conclusion, that the characters have become whole in a way by the end. So that overall arc is something we found in the edit.
Yeah. Well, yeah, thank you for taking us on that kind of like emotional journey through writing and directing, which I think, you know, everybody kind of goes through on some level when they're making a movie. And it kind of made me wonder about you know, whether you know, a question for all of you, but all directed at Aleksandra to start, do you consider writing in some ways more personal than directing, simply because, you know, you don't have to answer to, you know, at the very least, many people on a set, or sometimes dozens of people on a set, and it's just you in a room or just you and a co-writer. So do you find it to be a more personal kind of form of expression to be writing or editing, for that matter, than being on the set?
I don't think so. Because when you're directing, I mean, it depends what. So there are many different. I mean, if you're, you know, a work for hire on an X-Men movie, it's going to be different, right? It's going to be different. But if you're doing kind of an indie writer-director auteur piece, I think it's this. I think it's the same level, because you are making a decision about everything, like the clothes people wear, the, you know, for the actors, do you want them to bring out a nuanced performance or a bigger you know, do you want to get them, what place do you want to get them, what resonates with you personally? So, you know, and sometimes it's a very vulnerable position, because people will, you know, they're the same as writing. I mean, writing is, even though filmmaking is very collaborative writing for me also is in a way, even though I'm the sole writer, I interviewed so many people. I spoke to so many Chinese people. Does this resonate with you? And I changed it when I heard stories. And so, and it's a collection of all my experiences, but then it's also my fantasies, but it's also other people's that I've heard along the way, that like driblets of, so it's also in a way collaborative, the same way that being a director of an auteur film is collaborative, I would say.
Sure.
So I'm very specifically saying this because it's so different when you're in a huge set and a work for hire. And
well, yeah, and let me kind of augment the question a little bit, because I think while you're talking, I was just thinking about the fact of, I consider directing, at least as personal as writing, but I would say it's more challenging to be personal in some ways, because, when it's just me alone in a room, and I, like sometimes I'll play the same album over and over again while I'm writing, and it's like, okay, I'm really channeling this feeling, and I'm completely controlling my sensory experience while I'm writing, and I'm locked into a kind of emotion and a feeling that I want to have in the film. And then you want to do the same thing on set, but it's a very different environment. Like there are a lot of questions. There are a lot of just practical decisions, and you have to use the whatever the side of your brain is that you do that with. One of the two. But you have to kind of switch over to a more practical way of thinking. And I find it much more challenging to lock into that really personal feeling of here's the feeling I want to have. Here's the feeling I have, and letting that feeling guide your decision when people are like waiting on you and there's a lot of noise around and stuff like that. And I wonder if any of you have similar experiences on set.
I have the reverse. I mean, I have the reverse. For me, it's harder to be more maybe with writing than it is on set. Maybe I thrive in this chaos and demanding environment. You know what I mean? Where I can just, versus when I'm alone, I'm writing and I start to second guess. You know what I mean? It's more tormented in a way.
Sure. Yeah.
So in that way, sometimes I double think what I'm writing, or how will this convey the right thing, or so I think you don't have time for that on set. So in a way, that's why I feel it's more at the auteur level, it's more personal. I think, or equally. This is
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Let's see.
Sorry, did the other ones want to? I didn't mean to jump in.
Oh, yeah, sorry. If either of you want to jump in, I don't want to put you on the spot, but especially with such a particular thing where, but I don't know, Stephen or David, do you have any thoughts on this subject?
Yes.
Great.
I think the writing is a guide, and why you should never submit your screenplay to a festival, because by the time they've read it, you've already got a different script in your hand. It's about putting words into images, and I think that is the transition. The writing really is discardable, or it will be taken over by the images and also by the actors. I mean, the best actors on earth are thieves, and you give them your script, they steal it, they run down the street with it, and they do exactly what they want.
Yeah.
And if they're good, then you find out stuff, you say, whoa, I didn't write that, or I didn't think of that. It is sort of that spark and flint of creation that the actors then give it a shape that the writing sort of stimulated them to do. But the writing basically gets left behind. It's there as a catalyst, then it's gone and it's transformed into performance.
Yeah, all of those answers are really interesting. I mean, Parker, it's a really good question. And honestly, I've just been sitting here and like, this is something I have thought about a lot, but I don't really have an articulate response to show for all that thought I've put into it. But, you're right in pointing out I think, this sort of central dilemma, which is, when you sit down to write, there is an immediate direct point of contact between your thoughts and your feelings and the piece of paper. There's an immediate transmission. So there is, theoretically speaking, a greater likelihood that there is like a transmission, an open tube between your interior life and what's happening on the page, because it's just that much more direct. You don't have to go through a factory system of all these department heads and casting and financiers and all the things where an idea, a central vision, or what have you, can become disparate and impersonal. So, how do you sustain that one-to-one? That, when you sit down and write, you're whispering into somebody's ear. How do you maintain that? And when you read a novel, someone's just talking right into your ear. How do you maintain that in a film when you're making a film? And I think, I don't know jack shit, but I think it has something to do with some, it's the boring answer, but like hiring correctly, like picking the right department heads with whom that are resonating with the ideas, the central emotional conceits and ideas at the heart of what you're trying to express. Not, and this goes for casting as well. If you're, you can't cast a goat to play a cow. Like, if you are casting and hiring people with whom their work, their sensibilities you're all aligned, and then you go on set, and you work on a scene, and it's like knowing the idea. You don't have to know it. There's a lot you don't know. I think what you said, Stephen, is right. Like, I don't know is central to the creation of art, but knowing at least the kernel, the core idea of what remembering of what you tried to express when you sat down and wrote, and seeing how that can be, the framework for what you're trying to accomplish in the scenes and in the beats. I think, and in the edit and with your music choices, I think if all of these things, all of these extensions, like, if it's like an octopus with a lot of arms, making sure that those aren't, because it starts with just the head and then it kind of spreads out and there's more people involved, so long as those other arms and tentacles are, if everybody's singing the same song, if it's one orchestra, as opposed to like every department and that's one of the biggest challenges on set, because like every department is always going to want to thrive and express itself. Yeah. And your job is to try to enable that and encourage that. You're a coach. You're not the athlete. You're not the one putting the ball in the rim. You're not the one playing the saxophone. So like, but we all have to sing the same song. So making the micro adjustments of like, that was really beautiful, or that was really beautiful and no but. We're moving on. So like just being able to distinguish in the moment, which is really hard because you really have to be present. Like, what is helping for there to be an organic harmony for this thing that we try to express? I don't know. That's a really long-winded.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely there. Yeah, my
thinking as I'm talking to you.
Absolutely, and what I was thinking during that is that while you were talking, it's just in my modest experience so far. It's there are no shortcuts to that kind of thing. It's get the right people, and then the best thing that I figured out how to do is just talk with them a lot. And just
communication is everything.
Spend a lot of time with them, both talking about the script and talking through scenes, talking about ideas of scenes, talking about their ideas of scenes, so that all of that facilitates getting on the same page. Even talking about, I think to a certain, if you have the time for it, talk about things that have nothing to do with the movie, and get comfortable with each other, and get to a point where you have more and more overlapped experience. And somehow all of that, it seems to be like, there are times where I'm kind of like I get to a point where like I might be fried. Like we might be like 12-hour, at the very end of a shooting day, and I'm like, I really don't know what's going to happen. We set up this scene, and then you start working, you realize like, oh, everybody kind of knows what to do. We talked about it all. Like, I don't have to go micromanaging everything because we have talked through everything, and they know what this story is. And it doesn't mean all of their decisions are exactly the same that I would have made, but they're all working in the, nobody's swimming, upstream. We're all going in the same direction. And I think that it's a really nice feeling.
Yeah, no, the word right, I think, is critical because, I think it's so easy to, make the wrong decision. There are so many opportunities for you to make the wrong decision over the course of putting it together. Like there's a great, I was listening to an interview with Mike Lee where somebody asked him like, most directors, when they watch their movies, they hate it. They can't stand it. It's like, I don't know how y'all feel, Stephen, Aleksandra, and Parker, but, and he says, yeah, no, I don't have that problem. I never have any regrets. But that's, I love watching my movies. I mean, first of all, they're incredible, but, sure. But no, the issue is, he says, I never have to make any compromises. It's like most directors who have this problem, they're looking at their movie and they say, oh, I had to do that to trigger the financing, or that shot I wanted to, he works in a very special way that no one else gets to work, where, he works with actors for years. They don't know who else is in the story, who else is in the film. They write as they go. So, it's a lot easier to not make mistakes, to not have regrets, and, to get everybody to sing the same song. But, when you, like most people who have to make sacrifices and make compromises and, who's going to help get, we're so tempted to chase the best or the shiniest object that or the one that's going to enable this thing to happen, that we forget what the right choice is. It's so easy to forget what the right choice is, and to make compromises that can be really detrimental to that. And Aleksandra, you said correctly, like when you have a smaller film, an independent film that you can control is a very loaded word, but one in which is less dictated by some of the concerns that you might be met with on a franchise film or what have you. It's easier to make it so that you're having to make less of those mistakes. But even with that, even in that kind of environment, the same rules apply. You really have to, I don't know, you have to be like I'm still trying to figure it out.
I'll say too, and we're gonna wrap up here in a little bit, so we only have one or two more questions left. But I'll say, Stephen and Aleksandra, you have an extra, I feel like you're doing all of what David and I both just talked about, like, with a blindfold on, essentially, because you're also acting. And so, I wonder what your process is, because you can't be, at least I'm assuming, unless you're, kind of like a super genius is, that you can't be giving these great performances and at the same time be thinking like, oh, is that camera over there? Is that person kind of is the camera in the right place? Is this other actor giving the kind of performance that I need in this moment? And so what is your process in terms of giving over that control to other actors and to I'm assuming your cinematographer or camera operator, to make sure that you're telling the story that you wanted to tell, but you have the ability to focus on, your own character you're playing in your performance? And I'll start with Stephen.
I was going to start with Aleksandra.
I can start if you want.
Sure.
Stephen can think about it. I actually feel like I'm always thinking about both, and maybe that's a detrimental thing to both.
No,
my acting and my directing. I don't know, but I do. but I use it to fuel. I use it to fuel my acting. So if, like, for example, there's a scene where I'm with another actor, and as a director, I'm not happy with but also, you know, it's not so different from being the actor, because as an actor, I'm not happy with what they're giving me. You know, like they're not vulnerable enough, or they're not doing the lines right. And so I use it for my character. I get more impassioned, or I get a little angry, or I change my line read, and that's like what you do as an actor anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I feel that's what I do as an actor anyway. You know, it's what I learned in school, acting school. It's just where you have to use it, whatever you're feeling at that moment. And I can't separate myself a lot of the time from the directing. And I think because I'm an actor, it makes me a better director, you know, for these reasons, because I can feel that someone's not in it, or, you know what I mean? And so, So I'll use it, and I don't separate it. And I wanted to very much, because I've made four or five shorts before, and I also was the writer, director, actor, and producer for all of them. And so I have a rhythm, and I see that each take playback, you know, afterwards. If I have a very good rapport with the DP, and I trust them, and I know them, and I blah blah blah, and we have a rhythm, and that, you know, and the scene maybe isn't so important story-wise, it's not a major beat or shift or anything like this, then I won't do playback. Or if we're running short on time and it fits all those criteria, I won't do playback. But I'd rather do playback than have another take. Then like if I have a choice of watching playback but getting only 3 takes, or not watching playback and getting 6, I'd rather watch playback.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's kind of, I you know, in this particular film, there wasn't, because there was quite a, you know, there's a cultural difference also how people shoot in China. So not that the DP was not talented, he was quite good, but there were a lot of differences, you know, so I looked at playback all the time. And also I wanted to give him I wanted to encourage him to find his own style and rhythm. And as we talked about in our discussion, right, that because the movie is about following your feeling and not following rules. It's sort of similar in theme to Love Is Not Love.
Yeah.
But
well,
so I wanted the cinematographer to do that.
I'm really sorry, but I think we're going to have to end it with following your feelings instead of following the rules. So I think our time is up. Thank you very much, Stephen, Aleksandra, and David. Everybody watch Love Is Not Love, Touch, Materna, and my movie also, if you still have time, A Lark and a Swallow. And everybody enjoy the rest of the festival. Thank you.
Thanks, Parker.
Thank you.
Bye, David.
Thank you
Bye,
so much.
Aleksandra.
Bye-bye.